is that you guys come out feeling as though you have in some way connected with a community who think like you do. You've got some tangible steps to put in place, and you can kind of see potentially a different reality of your health from the hour that we're spending here together. Welcome already. So I hope it's not cliche to start with a quote. Even if it is, I'm going to do it. Every human being is the author of his own health or disease, by none other than the Buddha. So this quote I must have found years ago, and it's probably I think it's one of the pivotal ones in what's happened with my health. It's really interesting. You can read this one of two ways. A lot of people will read this and they will not like it because in some ways it makes them feel guilty or ashamed somehow that they have something wrong with their health, like, you know, they could have done something to change it before it happened to them. The thing about me is that I read this and I saw it as literally the definition of empowerment, because to be the author of something is to write the narrative, and that's to decide where your journey goes. And of course, you know, we're talking about MEN1, which is a genetic condition. I didn't ask my parents to pass it down to me. I really wish I'd had an opportunity to speak with them beforehand, but that didn't happen. What I do know now is that I have, as a result of what's happened to me, a huge amount of influence in my health. I have agency over where things go. And okay, at the moment, we're a little bit unsure as to, you know, the capacity for genetics. We're not really sure whether we can necessarily rewrite the gene or undo what's happened. That might be for thousands of years ahead. But what we do know is that we as individuals have so much power when it comes to our health, like you wouldn't even imagine. And we're only really beginning to experience it now. Even with a condition like this, there is so much that we can do. And there's a lot more we can do than we can't do. And so that's why I actually see this quote as incredibly empowering, and I keep coming back to it. So in a nutshell, my journey looks like this. From surgery 3 to surgery 3. There's actually a big chapter before that, which I've missed out because I couldn't get it in the slides, but I'll explain a little bit about that. So my diagnosis came at the age of about 12 or 13. We knew the condition ran in my dad's family. And his sister, so my aunt, basically dropped dead with the condition after having been incredibly ill. And that's how that they found the presence of the gene in my family, and then in other relatives as well. So we knew it was something that I was going to have to get tested for, and my siblings as well. I had a really interesting attitude towards this condition, which was because I was, even at the age of 12, incredibly stubborn, very resilient, and just enormously enthusiastic. And it's good to see that nothing has changed. I had absolutely no doubt that I was going to keep a handle on what was going on and that this condition was not going to affect my life. In fact, I remember saying to myself, as I sat in the geneticist's office and he said, "You have this condition," I remember saying to myself, that's not going to affect my life going forwards, or I'm not going to let it take over my life. And I think at the age of 12, that's quite a remarkable thing to be thinking. So went through the kind of first year of diagnosis. We've been told not to expect anything until my 40s. That's what normally happens with the condition. About a year later, things started to go a little bit awry and I got incredibly ill. And long story short, after months and months of not really knowing what was going on and lots of different tests and monitoring, I was sent in for my first round of surgery, which was incredibly successful. And I have to say, I went at it at the time without a lot of fear because I was massively faithful that I was going to be okay. There was also a part of me that didn't really like attention. So the idea that someone would, give pity to what was going on to me just didn't sit well. I didn't want that to happen. So I just put a massive brave face on. I said, I'm going to get through. And somehow I did. And that was the first thing, looking back on it now, that was the first thing that showed me that it is mindset as much as what's going on with your body that dictates your health. So I'd say the years between 13 and 17, 18 were a bit of a roller coaster. So those of you with this condition may well know that it is one of those conditions where when things are fine, they're fine. Like, you don't really have to worry. When things are not fine, it kind of feels like shit's falling apart and there's not a lot you can do. And there sometimes isn't really a middle ground. And that's how I describe my kind of teen years, was a lot of ups and a lot of downs and a lot of not really knowing what was going on. The whole time, I knew I was going to be okay. I had that faith that I, first discovered when I was 12. And I kept going through and I kept being resilient. The thing is that when I got to my second round of surgery, I was a little bit less resilient. I was a bit like, this is a real bummer because I've got my Oxford application coming up in a few months. I've got interviews after that. I've got my A-levels the following summer. This could really muck things up for me. But still, I thought everything's going to be okay. Went in for the surgery. It was all super smooth. And again, I was just pulling on that sense of what can I do in this moment? And I'm not actually suggesting that this is a good thing to do. I used distraction and denial to the biggest potential that I could. So I basically would just focus on anything except the condition. And at that point, it was my university application and my A-levels. And I thought, I'm just going to power on through and I'm going to get through. Did the surgery. I have to say, that surgery was not fun. And that's when I really started to experience what it was for my body to be under that kind of trauma. And it was that memory, despite the resistance, the resilience, and the stoicism and the perseverance, it's that memory that still sticks with me today of the pain and the discomfort of being in surgery, which is not a fun experience if anyone's ever tried it. I'm sure some of you have, not willingly. So second lot of surgery, all smooth. We get round to surgery. Well, I say surgery number 3. What happens was I got back to Oxford for my final year. So I was 21 by this point. Things in MEN1 post second surgery, which was incredibly successful again. I'm so grateful for my team at the NHS. They were absolutely remarkable and they fitted everything round my life. I mean, it couldn't have been more. I would have thought it was private care and it wasn't. It was NHS. It was remarkable. But I get back for my 4th year at Oxford. I'm sitting in the library. Term hasn't even started yet. I shouldn't really have had my emails up, but I did. And I see a notification popping up onto my screen, an email to say that a document had been uploaded to my portal, my patient portal. And if you've heard any of my lives, you'll understand that I have a very mixed relationship with that concept. I get into the email, I read it, and what I interpret from the email is they found more tumors on my pancreas and they're going to need to operate. And immediately it was as though my world came crumbling down around me. And that sense of faith I had, that sense of perseverance, that sense of I'm going to be okay, I'm bigger than this, just dissipated like that. I had nothing. And I spent 48, I can't remember the exact time now, I think it was about 48 hours genuinely thinking that I was going to be in surgery like in 2 weeks' time. There wasn't a very logical part of me that thought they probably would have told me, someone would have called me up. That didn't happen at all. I genuinely thought I was in fear mode for about 48 hours. So like most people do in this condition, jumped on an email to my consultant and I said, what the F is going on? Got on the phone with him and he said, well, I don't know why you're so concerned. And I thought, here we go, another dismissive consultant who's trying to make me into a little patient who doesn't understand what's going on. And actually, I take that back because he's still my consultant now and he's probably one of the best ones out there. But he said, I'm not sure why you're so concerned. He said, I think you've misinterpreted some of the jargon. What's actually happening is that we have found some tumors. They're tiny and you don't need surgery imminently. He said, we found them, we're monitoring them, and that's all that's necessary for now. But it was the last 2 lines that stuck with me. What he said to me was, you do realize that's what happens with this condition is surgery or medication or monitoring. He said, that's just the way things work. And it was at that point where I thought, I don't really want things. That's not really how I want my life to be. I don't really want to be living always in fear of that next surgery coming around, of it being the next thing to come around the corner, of never really knowing. And it was funny, he'd said to me, you don't need surgery. That wasn't the slightest reassurance in my head whatsoever. There was no sense of relief that I wasn't going to be in surgery in 2 weeks' time. It wasn't going to be 2 weeks' time, but it could have been 2 years' time, or it could have been 20 years' time. But to me, it didn't matter. There were tumors there, and I knew that was going to mean something if I didn't do something about it. And I sat with that for a few weeks. In fact, it ended up being a few months, and it ignited this very stubborn part of me I referred to earlier that just said, no, like I refuse to hear that my future is going to have to look like that. That may well be what's understood, you know, from a conventional medicine point of view at the moment. We just don't know. And I thought, there's this part of me that knows that that's not going to happen. It's the same, I think, part of me that at 12 years old said, don't worry, you're going to be fine. It was that faith. But at this point, it was a little bit more urgent, and it said, don't panic. Go and find out what you can do. And I have to say, that was the pivotal moment for me. It was a point where ME1 had very much sat in the background of my life. And when it had caused problems and reared its head, that's when I paid it attention. I'd never really paid my health attention, you know, much before that. And at this point, things had to be different. I knew that things had to change. And that is where I guess we come up to with the slide, from surgery 3 to surgery 3. It was that point of sitting, looking on the precipice of my third surgery, but potentially the fourth one, fifth one, sixth one, seventh one as well, that I just thought things have to be different. I will do whatever is within my power to try and make sure that I am avoiding a prognosis, which in the grand scheme of things is not terrible in sort of health terms, but actually for someone who's young and who's proactive and wants to have a bit of a life, it wasn't ideal. So that's kind of where I call the end of chapter 1 and the beginning of chapter 2 started. It ignited in me, I think, what has brought me here, which is a part of me that knew that I had something to do. I had a role to play, not just in my own health, but in the health of other people. And how could I go out there and transform my reality with this health and then share it with others? And that is essentially what I've come to share with you guys today, if you are willing to listen to it and hear it. And I really, really hope that as I kind of go through the rest of the workshop and the presentation, that there might be something that I'm saying that resonates or aligns with your experience, or you just haven't heard of before, and you know, you think, actually, that's kind of cool, that's a new insight, I hadn't thought about that. So as I'm going through, like, jot things down, pop them in the chat. Like, if there's something that resonates with your experience, or something where it's like a boom moment and you think, wow, like that actually could potentially change the trajectory of my health, whether that's directly right now or whether that's as a result of some consistent action, whatever it is, jot it down, type it in, and keep it as interactive as possible. And believe me, whatever reality you are imagining, that you are desiring, and you think it's like miles away, it's far, far closer. That was how it was for me. And I'm determined to show you that the same is possible. So if the slides will work. Oh, I almost forgot. I got so caught up in my own story. This was actually a photo that I wanted to share with you guys. So this is my young, this is cheating a little bit because this isn't actually me in hospital. Well, she's the patient, Catherine's the patient. And that is me going to visit her. So very sadly, my sister, a few years after I had my first round of surgery, had to go and have exactly the same thing. And it was, I have to say, heartbreaking to see her in there with all her little widgets and gadgets and stuff attached to her, and, you know, tubes coming out left, right, and center. But it was incredible to look at her and see a mirror for what was going on for me. And I think part of seeing someone you love go through that makes you even more aware of it in yourself, or it did with me as well. And it just ignited this passion to maybe change the way that I thought things had to be. As I say, I'm a stubborn person, and if anyone had told me, you know, that I'd be sitting right here telling you guys or sharing this story with you, I would have said absolutely not. I'll be in some corporate job, probably proofreading. And now I'm not. I'm proofreading my own work and my own emails around this, and that's what's been so exciting about this journey. So Catherine, when you watch this back on recording, yeah, I hope you know you've been an inspiration to me. Okay, before I get all emotional. The main thing I'm here to share with you, my 3 pillars of empowerMEN1. You can see I've played around a little bit with the words empowerment. the whole idea for me of where I am now versus where I was before, if someone had said to me, define your health experience now, I would have to say empowered, because there has been something so revolutionary about discovering the power I have over my own health in my journey. And if I relate it to what I had before, which was disempowering. So if you've had something like this, I'm sure you have, feeling utterly frustrated because your bloods get lost or they haven't gone on ice, confused because you can't get the same answer from two different doctors. You are struggling to just keep your head above water with the rest of life that's going on. You are feeling isolated in your experience because no one really gets it, or you can't quite find the right community for yourself. That was my experience. That was disempowerment. And it pulled me through to empowerment. So everything I wanted to put in place, all the steps I put in place, was where I have got to now. And that's what I want to share with you, if you will allow me. Okay. First one, think curiously. So a lot of us do a lot of thinking. Thinking just happens. There's a big difference between, for me, thinking and then being curious. And when you put the two together, they're pretty powerful. So for me, curiosity it's an open-mindedness. It's a willingness to learn. It's an ability to sit with the discomfort of contradictory statements. It is following a thread because you think it might take you somewhere. It was this that basically started me off on my journey. So I was told surgery number 3, and that's going to be on the horizon at some point. Stubborn Lizzie said, no, absolutely not. And the first thought that really started occurring to me was, okay, is there something I can do that I don't know about yet? What is it I don't know? Who is it I haven't met? Like, where is it that I'm not looking? All of these questions that normally we ask out to someone outside of us, but actually it's asking the questions within, and with that edge of the curiosity of being open to what the answer is. To make it incredibly tangible for you, and it's going to sound cliched as anything, diet or gut health was actually the first thing that my curiosity led me to. And diet is a really interesting one. I think it has many different nuances, and I'll explain those later. For me, my journey with gut health and diet, which I know I've spoken about and I've had questions about, I think some of you have asked me about it. The reason I'd gone to a gut specialist was because I couldn't get an answer for some problems I was having with my health. It's so common, the classic IBS situation. And I'd gone to my consultant and I said, this was the problem. She said, we'll send you to get some testing. Testing didn't show anything up. Okay, sorry, you're right back in the box where you started. And that just kind of, as I say, it ignited this curiosity in me that thought, well, what if there is something out there that I don't know? And what if the two are connected? And actually, no one's going to answer that for me. No one's going to do the work for me. Perhaps I had to do it. It was around this time that I'd also started thinking about epigenetics, which I'm sure you guys know about because you'll be well read on these topics already. But if you're not, or you're not sure, epigenetics is the idea that we can influence the expression of certain genes with factors such as diet, lifestyle, and environment. I am still at loggerheads with different specialists in MEN1 to find out whether you can affect the mutated part, the MEN1 mutation on the gene. I don't know if that's possible, but all I do know is that epigenetics plays a huge role, even in the health of someone with MEN1. So the idea that actually nothing's going to happen with us with a gene mutation was rubbish. It wasn't good enough for me, and I had to go after something else. I read this book. I don't know if it's going to, you guys might see it backwards in case you can't read it the right way. The Disease Delusion. It was on my lovely mum's bookshelf, and I picked it up during lockdown. I was absolutely sick to the back teeth of my degree. I couldn't think of anything that I wanted to do less. And the only thing at that point that was actually giving me any passion whatsoever was health, and it was my own health. And I picked this book up and I turned to the first few pages, and it put the power in me, because it told me that actually my health wasn't at the hands of my genes. It was in something that was entirely under my control. And it stated that to be diet, lifestyle, and environment. I'd already started seeing a gut specialist. And I, again, total cliche, had felt completely amazing straight after what had happened. It had, you know, when people are like, oh, I cut gluten out of my diet and I felt like a new person. It was true. Like, genuinely, that was the case. And as cliched as it sounds, it was remarkable. It was absolutely remarkable, the change it made. And not just gluten, but basically becoming more aware of what I was putting inside my body. And making these changes and feeling so different, it just got me thinking, well, what is the possibility that, you know, if I can put things in place that make me feel like this and are going to have an effect on certain parts of my body, is that going to be the case for MEN1 as well? There is no substantive evidence that actually backs this up. So I'll put a disclaimer out there now, and there won't ever be, because no one's ever going to invest the time or the money in that sort of thing. You know, we've got millions of pounds going into, you know, the classic kind of drugs and classic research and stuff. No one's ever really going to think, you know, let's look at diet and MEN1, except me at that point, or I thought it was just me. And potentially my functional medicine doctor, who I will introduce to you here, who is one of the most eclectic people I've ever met. Mum's probably laughing at this as well, because his dog Goliath is in the picture. I don't know why you'd name a dog that size after Goliath, but there we go. And he's become an absolute pillar in my health experience, partly because he absolutely fundamentally believes in what he does. He doesn't care if he pisses people off, and he gets results. And that reminds me of other people that I work with as well. I said to him, is there any way that the work you and I are doing together is ever going to affect MEN1? And to put him on the scale of conventional to hippie, most people would say he's a hippie. He's pretty much here. He's pretty conventional, even in terms of a functional medicine doctor. And he said to me, this was his answer: good immunity for sure, plus not forgetting nutrient absorption, which is likely part of good immune defense. The most important part for me was that didn't say, no, you are absolutely crackers, which is what I thought he was going to say. That shows me that actually there is something in gut health, there is something in diet, there is something that I can do on the level of my own health that is going to affect the way that MEN, potentially affect the way that MEN functions going forwards. It's not necessarily going to rewrite the gene code. It's not necessarily going to get rid of the disease. I don't know whether that will ever happen. But all I knew is that the results I was feeling at the time, which made me absolutely, I just felt like a different person. I thought, this is something for me to follow. That was my thinking, curiously. That was curiosity for me, to actually ask the question, which probably not many people are going to ask, or if they received an answer, might just kind of close the book on something. I'm someone who likes to keep the book open and keep flicking the pages. Also, curiosity is open-mindedness. So as humans, we often don't like to hear, I realize in myself, we don't like to hear what we don't want to know. And we don't like to hear what we think is, you know, we might be responsible for, but ultimately don't want to be. And I've realized that when I thought like that, all the doors were closed. And when I brought curiosity into it, that's when doors started opening. Part of curiosity is being open to hearing stuff you don't want to hear, but also being able to sit with that and work out, okay, well, where does that sit in terms of my actions, my thoughts, and my beliefs going forwards, and what I do. So, as I say, I am about to actually interview this guy on Wednesday. So yeah, a couple of days' time. And he'll be really chuffed to know that I've included his photo on here, and probably his dog too. But I thought it's only fair if I ask the other end of the health spectrum as well, as to the question of diet. This is my endocrine consultant, who did appear on my podcast very recently, and he is absolutely incredible. He's probably one of the best in his field. I said to him, Professor Miran, is there any chance that gut health and MEN1 are related? And his answer was, I don't know, it might do, who knows. And I thought, that's great, because he's not said no. He's also not said yes. And to me, that just leaves possibility. That leaves the openness of potential for me to go and do something about it and see what happens on the level of my own health. His colleague, also interviewed on my podcast, fantastic person, said, the conventional answer is no. There's no substantial evidence for it, but who knows? It's an unknown unknown. So a very, very similar answer. You can tell that they're both, they come from the same line of training. And that's true. There's no, actually, I have to stop myself there. There is evidence and I've seen it. It's just that they might not have seen it. But this showed to me, again, on this topic of thinking curiously, there is no point going and asking for help from people where it's just not their area. It's not their thing. And that's where I'm being guided elsewhere. And that's probably what has guided me to staying with the gut specialist, is that is something that's within his remit. That's something where he and I speak the same language. And that's not to say that I disregard anything that comes from anywhere else, because I think that is not a sensible thing to do in health or in anything in life. But there's balance. And it was a balanced answer that came out for me from this. So to kind of wrap up that stage of thinking curiously, when curiosity is thinking outside the box, it's going beyond where most other people would stop, and it's asking what is possible. And from there is so much more available to you than when you stand back and you kind of accept no for an answer, or you stop looking. And that's why it is absolutely one of these fundamental pillars, because I think without curiosity and without that open-mindedness, you really stop yourself, you limit yourself. Okay, number 2, choose consciously. There's a bit of a theme going on here. Everything seems to begin with a C. I think there's a literature student inside of me still who just loves alliteration. So choice is massive. And again, going back to that quote I mentioned at the beginning, we are the author of our health or our disease. That comes from choice. It comes from the decisions and the choices that we make in every moment, because our reality is determined by those things, by the decisions we make in every moment. And it was this book that showed me I had so much I could do that I didn't even know about. It introduced to me the ideas of diet, environment, lifestyle. And even those can be broken down into, so diet, it's not just what you're eating, it's not just, is it organic? Is it, high in fiber? Diet is like, it's how you're eating as well. When are you eating? Why are you eating? What's the purpose behind it? What's the behavior behind it? Environment, it's not just, do you get out into nature and, go and hug a tree once in a while? Environment is literally everything that is part of your being, and everything you're exposed to. So you're talking toxins, pollutants, your stuff that you use on your skin, anything like that. It's huge. And I started to branch out into all these areas. I mean, mum will tell you, I literally I think probably in I don't know, about 2 days, I'd got rid of all of my makeup, all of my, body care products and everything, and just changed massively, because I was so all or nothing. It was like, I have to try absolutely everything. Lifestyle as well, stress factors, your job, your exercise, all of that sort of thing. Like, as you're reading through this list, think about it in terms of your life. So when you see these words, does it make you think, okay, actually, yeah, that's something that, I've not been that comfortable with for a while, and it's something that I could change or I could bring awareness to? Because actually that's where our power is. It's in doing or not doing these things. Diet, environment, lifestyle, again, very broad categories. Then, so I sat very happily here for a good couple of years. I did all the classic stuff. I cut out gluten. I started yoga. I found meditation. I got rid of all the crap that was in my house. I left Oxford, where it was totally stressful. I, moved home. I started working in something that was slightly more chill. And I thought, this is brilliant, you know, my health must be amazing. It didn't actually completely happen like that, because there was a fundamental layer missing underneath that I didn't actually realize. And it's called your internal self, your thoughts, your beliefs, and your emotions. So there's a massive part of your being which is made up of, your kind of internal, what's going on, internal movements, everything that's going around your body, because your cells are feeling all of these things. Your cells are feeling, or they are sensing your emotion, your beliefs, and your thoughts. So epigenetics talks about, you know, those far more external things. So what you're putting inside of you, on you, what you have around you. What it misses is actually what's far more intrinsic to your being. What are the thoughts you're thinking? You know, are they making you feel rubbish, or are they expansive? Are they unlimiting? Your beliefs, are you constantly living in, you know, your 5-year-old self? Do you feel like everyone's out to get you? Do you feel like you're not good enough? Because your body's going to be feeling that too. And all the emotions that are going to feed from those two things are, you know, that is absolutely intrinsic. And it was a layer of health that I had never, ever experienced before. So as I'm going through, like, if there's anything thought-wise, belief-wise, emotion-wise, that is something that just kind of niggles at you, or something where you think, actually, you know, that's been holding me back, or, you know, actually there is this toxic thought pattern that's keeping me where I am and not allowing me to move forward. It's chances are you're more likely to move somewhere with your health by shifting that than you are with shoveling a load of supplements inside of you. And it is this fantastic guy who kind of explains why, Dr. Joe Dispenza. When our behaviors match our intentions, when our actions are equal to our thoughts, when our minds and our bodies are working together, there is an immense power behind any individual. That, I mean, thinking about it now, I could have just cut the workshop and sent that to you instead, and we would have saved a lot of time and effort and angst with technology. But that's beside the point. What Joe Dispenza is saying is, actually, with everything that you do or everything that you don't do, it has to be matched by what's going on in here and in here too, because otherwise it's just empty. It's just doing for the sake of doing, or being for the sake of being. And that's where the power comes from. So I mentioned before about all these changes I made, you know, all the ways that I was feeling, you know, like changing my diet, you know, and feeling amazing. And then 6 months later, because that had normalized, I was like, well, why am I not feeling great anymore? Like, where is this leading? You know, where is this leading me to? My mentor calls it moving furniture around the room. So you can change little things, you can move things around, and things look different, but actually they're not. You know, everything stayed in the same place. And it's the same, I think, with health. You can put any number of expensive supplements, organic vegetables, you know, you can go for hydrotherapy, you can go for this, that, and the other. And actually, if you are not dealing with what is more intrinsic to you beneath the surface, it won't do anything. Like it won't scratch the surface. There has to be a combination of both of them. And I keep coming back to this because it can be so tempting when, in this day and age, when there is so much information out there. And as I said, Mum and I were talking about this earlier, you do have to be discerning, because there are scams and there are, you know, frauds out there. Like, there is a lot, and you don't necessarily know what's true. You don't necessarily know what to trust. You don't know what's going to help you. I think you have to come back to this and realize that actually it's not always about doing. It's that idea of meshing together the doing and the being from a very, very conscious space. And that's what brings me to consciously, because we can all choose. We can all decide that we're going to, you know, eat an apple rather than a chocolate bar. We can all decide that, you know, we're going to go to the gym rather than have a lie-in. But if there isn't conscious awareness behind that, behind why you're doing it, behind, you know, if there isn't a purpose, if it's not driven by something that's going on in here, like a desire for something better, it won't last. Like, it's not sustainable. And actually, the more you bring awareness to the choices that you make, the more right choices you make as well. And it's totally okay to make wrong choices, and we're always doing that. And I'm doing that the whole time, literally every single day. But actually, it is I'm making what I feel are intuitive choices now because I'm far more aware of the purpose behind them, the commitment I have to them, and also why I'm doing this. You know, it's not because someone told me that, you know, oh, I might affect my MEN1 if I cut gluten out of my diet. Not at all. It's because it was a much bigger picture than that. So if anything I've just said resonates, or, you know, anything, I mean, I did throw a lot of words at you: diet, lifestyle, environment, thoughts, beliefs, emotions. If any of that has landed, even if it's the tiniest thing, start asking yourself and maybe write it down. Like, what is it? What layer is it that actually you think might be the one that's in the way right now? Because we can all start eating, we can all order a Riverford organic box tomorrow, or, you know, we could cancel our delivery subscription or whatever. But actually, if that's not really the thing, if that's just hiding what the thing is, then it's not going to get us anywhere. And I have realized this so much in my journey with health, and particularly with MEN1, because there's such a passion to change it and to make a difference. Okay, pillar number 3, community. So community is a very strange word for me. I was not a community person for many, many years. I belonged to communities. I just didn't know that they were communities. So I went to school, I went to university, I belonged to clubs, I had hobbies. But the idea of ever having to rely or share or be supported by someone else was not a thing, because I was fiercely independent. I wanted to do everything by myself. And that worked for only so many years. And actually, it was my journey with MEN1 that taught me how important community was. So when I embarked upon this, you know, I had this pivotal moment. I decided I've got to find out what I can do for my health. I didn't have a community, and I went looking for them. As well as being absolutely fiercely independent, wanted to do it by myself, I did go out there and I started joining webinars, and I started joining groups, and I started to find people. No one was speaking my language. No one really, I felt, got it. Particularly within disease, and this disease, especially because of the nature of it, there is so much emphasis on problem, on what's wrong, on what you can't do, and there is so little around what is possible and the choices you can make. And it's partly at risk of being a little bit politically incorrect. Partly, some of it is, you know, because we don't want to look at what we can do, or there is a fear around making people feel as though they are responsible for their health. And when I say responsible, don't get that mixed up with to blame or guilty, because they're two very separate things. So taking responsibility for something is owning your response to it. So as I did with my health, you know, I said, I don't want to go into surgery another time. If there is anything I can do about it, I'm going to do what I can. So that was my response. It could have been very, very different. And to find people who have that approach to life in general, but to find people who have that approach in their health, and within that, MEN1, I couldn't find it anywhere. So for me, my community actually came outside of MEN1, and I started to connect with people who were thinking like I was, and I was able to apply that to my health. But in going through this journey and, you know, discovering all these things I'd looked for, and connecting with different specialists and trying out different practices, and, you know, getting into inner work and all these different things, I thought to myself, if I were to gift what I know now to someone, but without a sense of community, it wouldn't go anywhere. It wouldn't go anywhere, because community is the basis. Having people around you who you can lean on and who support you, but also who hold you accountable as well, and who aren't afraid to say the thing as it is so valuable. And it just doesn't exist, as far as I'm aware, outside of what I'm doing here and what I'm building and what you are helping me build here. So that's why I say find your right community. And I posted something the other day about, you know, we all very subconsciously, unconsciously just go and, you know, sit in a random train carriage and then find out we're stuck for the next half an hour with someone who's like yelling down the phone or having an argument or something. And it just makes you think, okay, I've got to endure this. But we have so much choice. That's not necessarily the case in something like MEN1, where we have choice about where we put our energy and our time and who we share our space with. And I think I can't impress upon you enough the importance that you surround yourself with the right people. And that might not be me, because you might hate what I'm saying. I think if you did, you would have logged off by now, or you're just being polite. It might not be that any of these principles are actually going to work for you, or maybe it just doesn't feel right, and that's okay. But go out and find what's right for you. And when you've got it and when you've found them, don't stop there. Keep building, and keep collaborating, keep communicating, make conversation. Everything does begin with C, doesn't it? It's just it's just so powerful. It's so powerful. What's next? Oh, okay, Lisa's time to shine. So Lisa and I connected a few months ago, and we chatted, and we very much agreed on this topic of community, not just community and having a space where you feel heard and listened to, but also like you can ask questions and explore. One that is filled with the right people. And the fact is, there is a very negative dialogue around disease. I don't like these words, binary words like negative and positive, because I think they are very difficult to deal with. But ultimately, the discussion around disease has been having at the moment, even though we are making huge steps, particularly since the pandemic, generally in something like a genetic condition, it's not really, it doesn't put power back in your hands. And when Lisa came and she joined the community, and she said, what I love is that I'm getting real tangible advice from someone who's been through it, but also it's so different to what I'm finding elsewhere, which is, it doesn't put you in a place where you feel influential, where you feel powerful. And that's where empowerment comes back into it, because unless you're going to take the power, you're going to stay in that space and you're going to go round and round in circles. So as I say, as I'm saying this, community, it might not be me, it might not be this one. For Lisa it is, which is amazing. And there have been other of you who have come in and you've said, wow, this is kind of refreshing what I'm seeing, and finally someone's speaking it, and finally someone's asking the kooky questions that I don't want to ask, in case my doctor looks at me like I'm a total weirdo and I might get discharged and never seen again, which I don't think is going to happen, by the way. But that's important. It's hugely, hugely important. So coming back to my quote at the beginning, every human being is the author of his health or disease. I hope, if we are almost 50 minutes into the session, that there is a part of you that realizes just how powerful you can be in your MEN1 reality. And not just MEN1, but your health in general. The two are so deeply intertwined. It's not MEN1 and then general health. And it pisses me off when doctors refer to it like that, because, everything happens together. But it's MEN1 that, that's that commonality that brings us together. And I really, really hope that with those three pillars that I talked about, your curiosity, your ability to choose consciously, and your awareness of the right community for you, that actually you can start to take a different trajectory with your health, or you can see where maybe you're blocked, or you might want to reconsider something or put certain steps in place, so that actually whatever you're experiencing at the moment, whatever you're managing at the moment, doesn't have quite the same hold on you, and you can see a different reality beyond that.